Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. So I'll be going over the optimal draft strategy if you have a late first-round draft pick. For the purposes of this video, I am assuming you're in a 12-team league with the 10th overall pick. So that's sort of where I was basing all of these ADPs off of and sort of what players should be available right around there. This is the fourth video in this series I've done. I've also gone over the 101, the 104, and the 107. And then after this video, you guys will get the 112 as well as the last pick in the draft. I'll try and do some more mock drafts and stuff that cover different formats and all that as well, just sort of give you guys a basis of how we want to handle different league formats and all sorts of that stuff as well. But really fun sort of doing these and just sort of seeing what we're looking at in terms of team roster construction, seeing what we can do based off of where we're drafting in the draft, and really realizing there is a really great opportunity to build a good roster regardless of where we're drafting this season, which I think is super cool. But it's also fun just to sort of see how the builds you have to sort of go into the draft sort of looking at, thinking that you're probably going to have to follow really do shape up based off of where you're drafting. So really fun making these videos. If you guys are drafting from a different spot or just curious, I highly recommend you go watch the other videos as well. Had a lot of fun making those, and it's been a lot of fun. So yeah, with that, let's just get into round one here. Starting things off in round one here, you actually got a ton of options here just because this is the first spot in the draft really where you're probably staring down pretty equally valuable running backs and wide receivers. You're pretty much looking at taking Puka Nacua or Jahmyr Gibbs here. Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison are going to be options as well. It's possible that maybe A.J. Brown slipped here as well, but I do think that Jahmyr Gibbs is probably going to be the guy that I would highly recommend you guys take. He's truly got an opportunity to break fantasy this season. He's a guy that could easily put up 1,500 plus scrimmage yards, catch 80 passes, and put up double-digit touchdowns. He could put up some Alvin Kamara level stats, and I think a lot of people are really worried about David Montgomery being in there stealing a lot of goal line work, and it's true David Montgomery is going to be super involved, but Jahmyr Gibbs could easily match sort of a similar mold like what we saw with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram in New Orleans for years, just where both those guys can be really good for fantasy, but obviously Alvin Kamara was the one that you wanted in fantasy more. And I think that Jahmyr Gibbs could easily put up those kinds of numbers, and he's just someone that I'm super excited to see ball out this season, and he'd definitely be the guy that I'd take if he's available here. And if he's not, I think I'd just be looking at taking the best wide receiver on the board. You could take whichever one you have ranked highest. I'd probably rank it Puka, Marvin Harrison, and then Garrett Wilson maybe not even Garrett Wilson there. I'm not super high on Wilson, but I think if Gibbs isn't there, you take the best wide receiver available, and otherwise you're probably taking Gibbs at this spot. Moving on to round two here, if you did take Jahmyr Gibbs in round one, I'd probably be looking to avoid the running back position altogether in round two. The wide receivers run out really quick, and if you look at who you'd be taking in round three, it's not necessarily bad players, but I just don't want to be in a spot where I'm ending up with someone like Tank Dell as my wide receiver one, and that's sort of what you're looking at if you go running back early. You're looking at a late third round pick being your number one wide receiver, and I think that's going to give you a pretty significant disadvantage over the course of the season, especially because there are a lot of running back values later on. I want to be targeting those, especially when the wide receivers really dry up. So I'd highly recommend that you do take the best wide receiver available here. Marvin Harrison, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Nico Collins, all really great picks here. Whichever one you like the most, whichever one of the best wide receivers is available, just take that one. And if you took a wide receiver in round one, say you took Puka Nacua, say you took Marvin Harrison, I don't hate the idea of drafting Jonathan Taylor here in round two. You could do that. I'm not super excited about Jonathan Taylor this season just because I don't really think he's got that league winning upside. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's got a shot to be the RB1 this season, but assuming he stays healthy, he's going to be really solid. If you want to take him here in round two, I think he's a perfectly fine draft pick. It's not probably what I would do. I'd probably just go wide receiver, but I just want to make sure you guys know it's totally an okay option if you want to do that. Moving on into round three here, this stuff gets a little bit weird because it's really not a great spot to take running back unless you somehow get someone like Kyren or Derrick Henry to slip and fall to you. You're not really looking at any running backs in this draft in this round. You're really just looking at taking the best player on the board, and I'm really not in love with any of the values here. You're looking at wide receivers like Tank Dell, George Pickens, Amari Cooper, Zay Flowers. Dell and Flowers are the two that are at the top of draft boards, and honestly, I kind of like Pickens just as much as both those guys, who goes like 5 or 6 spots later. So I do think I would take the best wide receiver off the board because I don't get super excited about taking a guy like Josh Allen or Travis Kelce or one of those high-end onesie positions super early because I like the values of those guys really late. But if you're not excited about any of those wide receivers that are available, there really aren't any running backs that I'd be looking to take here in round three. I totally have no problem just taking the easy route here. If you want to draft Josh Allen, he's not going to be the reason your team's bad this year. So you could do a lot worse than taking Josh Allen in round three. I'd have no problem doing that. And if those guys happen to be gone, then maybe you're looking at a spot where one of those really higher end players did slip and fall to you. So I still think I would be looking at taking the best wide receiver on the board here, but if you want to go with the onesie position, take the best player available there, I've got no problem with that either. In round 4 here, I actually want to highlight the risk of missing out on running back is pretty real here if we wait until round 5. James Cook goes at pick 58, which is going to be your 5th round selection, and there is to me a significant tier break after him, and that does mean that you're really putting yourself at risk if you still need to get your RB2 going into round 5. So if you've only got one running back at this spot, and even potentially 0, which is possible if you went Puka and then Marvin Harrison or something to start your draft, you've definitely got to be targeting the running back position in this round. There's still some really great values like Isaiah Pacheco and Travis Etienne. I'd be really happy to get those guys. And if you do have 0 running backs at this spot, you almost have to take a running back here. And if you do happen to have one, maybe somehow you got 2 running backs already, I think I'm just taking any position. I'm taking the best player available. In round 4 is definitely where I'm happy to take Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts, Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta. They'd be in consideration as well. George Pickens, T. Higgins, Amari Cooper, all great options there. Whoever you want, just take the best player available and just keep that in mind in terms of what your roster construction is going to be going forward. In round 5 here, like I mentioned earlier, James Cook has an ADP of pick 58. He's one of my favorite players to draft this season, and he's currently being drafted right where you're going to be selecting in round 5. So if he's there, I'm absolutely taking him, even if I've got 2 running backs already. I know I don't normally like to take 3 running backs in the first 5 rounds, but James Cook's the one I'd be willing to make an exception for. I think he's got a shot to be even flirting with a top 5 finish this season, and I just really want to get him, especially at cost. That's just way too valuable for me. If you only have one running back, I do think it's important to grab another running back here in either this round or in round 6. There's a pretty significant tier gap if we wait till round 7, and I just want to keep in mind that there are still some really good players available, even though James Cook is, to me, the clear-cut number 1 running back left on the board here. There's guys like Rachaad White, Joe Mixon, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, David Montgomery. All of those guys are really great options, and I just want to mention as well that you can play the ADP game here. There's going to be 4 picks in between your round 5 and round 6 selection. So if all of those guys are on the board, you don't need to take one of them right now. You could certainly wait till round 6. But just keep in mind that I want to have my second running back by the end of round 6. Other than that, if one of the top 5 tight ends is available, I do definitely want to be targeting them. They're probably all washed up at this point. They've all been taken up. But if Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, if one of those guys makes it to you here in round 5, that's an auto pick. You've got to do that. Even if James Cook's on the board, I would certainly consider doing that. And then other than that, I don't really love any of the wide receivers in this range. So if push came to shove, I'd probably be looking at taking the best quarterback or running back, Anthony Richardson or C.J. Stroud. There's certainly options. And other than that, like I said, probably just take the best running back on the board. In round 6, I want to highlight again that you really want to make sure you have at least 2 running backs after this round. There's going to be a really long wait before your next pick, and the running backs available in round 7 do look a little bit scary compared to the guys that you can get here. So taking a guy like Rachaad White, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, David Montgomery, all really great picks, especially for round 6. It's crazy that we can get guys this good this late. Outside of that, at tight end, Evan Ingram and David Njoku, they would certainly be options for me in this round. It is a bit of a reach for both of those guys, but the one thing I'm noticing, especially with this draft selection, is that there really isn't a position that presents itself where you're really being given an opportunity to get even decent value at the tight end position. So if you want to get a good tight end, you're probably looking at drafting them a little bit ahead of ADP, and that's totally okay. I think it's definitely important that we do get one of those top 6, top 7 tight ends, and if you want to reach on one of these guys in round 6, I have no problem doing that, especially if you're feeling good at wide receiver and running back. This could be your last shot to get one of the top tier difference makers at the tight end positions. So I don't mind reaching on one of those guys. At quarterback, if Stroud is available, he's a great selection. And otherwise, the wide receiver position, not great in this round. I hope you don't need one at this point, but Deontay Johnson, Ladd McConkey, pretty good options if you want to take a wide receiver. But in round 6, I wouldn't be super stoked about it, but they should return pretty good value there anyway. Moving on to round 7, there's still some solid RB options here, especially as your RB3, guys that I don't necessarily want to be my running back 2, but guys that I'd be pretty excited about as being like a flex or a bye-week fill-in. So guys like Najee Harris, Jonathan Brooks, Amir White, Jalen Warren, really solid options at running back if you need them. They can be RB2s for you if you need to. If you went light on the running back position early on, those guys are solid options. If you don't have a quarterback, this is probably one of your last chances. This round or round 8, you're really going to want to make sure you've got your quarterback after round 8 here. So guys like Kyler, Burrow, Dak, Jordan Love, those are the guys that I'm targeting almost regardless of where I'm drafting. So keep an eye on those 4 names. I really want to get one of those guys if I can. At the tight end position, Evan Ingram and David Njoku might still be here. If you don't have a tight end yet, it's one of your last shots to get them. Draft them in round 7 or round 8. And other than that, I don't really love the wide receivers in round 7. Not really looking to draft them. There are guys like Jameson Williams, Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, Brian Thomas. Okay players, guys that I don't necessarily hate, but taking them in round 7. Those are kinds of players that I'm drafting to be on my bench, guys that I'm drafting to put upside, and I still think they're starting caliber players at the other positions here, so I wouldn't be looking to take those guys just yet. In rounds 8 and beyond, if you still don't have a quarterback or a tight end here, I think it's probably too late. But if you somehow got lucky, if Njoku's still there, you're taking him. If one of those 4 quarterbacks I mentioned, Jordan Love, Dak, Burrow, Kyler, if one of those guys is available, you're definitely taking them. And then otherwise, if you miss out on those guys, so if Njoku's gone, if all those quarterbacks are gone, I would just wait on both positions. You're going to be okay streaming tight end and quarterback if you need to. And the value that you get by taking a Dalton Schultz earlier, by taking a Tua early, it's not going to be much better than what you're going to be streaming off of waivers. So you might as well just sort of wait. Understand that you're going to have a disadvantage at that position. Just sort of stack value everywhere else and then play the waiver wire beyond that. Other than that, target upside the rest of the way unless you feel like you do need to get a little bit of depth at a position. Running back in general, if you only have 2 running backs here, I think it's okay to grab a guy like James Conner, Raheem Mostert, Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, those guys, Zach Moss, guys that can just give you some points and are solid options. Then other than that, just keep in mind ADP starts mattering less and less the later we get on. Just make sure you get your guys. If you draft a guy 20 spots ahead of ADP in the 12th round, who cares? If he ends up being good, it was a great pick regardless. So just get your guys. Make sure that you're happy with your team after the draft, and understand that at this point in the draft, we're drafting guys with really low hit rates anyway. So just go for upside. Go for guys that have a chance to be real difference makers for you, and hopefully they hit for you. So that'll do it for the optimal draft strategy with pick 110. Up next, I'll be going over the optimal draft strategy with the last pick in the draft. So that'll conclude this series. It's a 5-part series. If you guys haven't watched the other videos, I highly recommend that you guys go take a look at those. Up next as well, beyond that, I'll be doing a video going over some different auction draft strategies. We'll get more mock drafts in. We're going to talk about some of my favorite sleepers, some values, breakouts, busts, guys that I'm super high on this season. We'll get into some different ADP comparisons across different platforms, all sorts of good stuff. We're going to keep putting out 4 videos a week throughout the course of the rest of the off season. So just make sure you subscribe to the channel so that way you don't miss any of that. It's going to be all free, and I'll be here all off season and regular season long to help you guys win your championships. So yeah, I really appreciate you guys. There's going to be a lot more content coming. It's just going to be a lot of fun. So appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you with the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.